One of these stories involves a room that, according to hotel records, had been completely empty for 5 days. The room service employee who walked into it and spoke to the man sitting at the table would disagree. Hotels are strange places. Thousands of people cycle through the same rooms, sleep in the same beds, stand in the same showers. Most guests check out and never think twice. But the employees, the ones working the desk at 2 a.m., pushing housekeeping carts down empty hallways, riding the elevator alone to the top floor, they think about it. These are 4 of the things they've seen. A woman I'll call Renata worked housekeeping at a mid-sized business hotel for about 3 years. She described it as mostly routine work, the kind of job where every day blurs into the one before it. Strip the bed, replace the towels, restock the tiny soaps, move on. But there was one rule at her hotel that every housekeeper followed without question. If a do not disturb sign had been on a door for more than 48 hours, you were supposed to report it to management. Not knock, not let yourself in. Report it. Management would then call the room. If there was no answer, security would do a welfare check. Renata said most of the time it was nothing. A late checkout, a guest who'd lost track of time. Once, a businessman who had been working a 72-hour deadline and forgotten to eat. But one afternoon, she was pushing her cart down the 4th floor when she noticed room 412. The do not disturb sign had been there since she started her shift on Monday. It was now Wednesday. She almost walked past it. Almost. But something made her stop. She said later that she couldn't explain it. There was just something about the air near that door. Something dense, like the hallway itself was holding its breath. She knocked anyway, softly, just once. Silence. She knocked again. And then she heard it. A sound from inside the room, low, rhythmic. She described it as something between humming and breathing, but with a pattern to it that didn't feel quite right, not quite human. She stepped back from the door. Her cart bumped against the wall behind her. She stood there for a moment, completely still, and then she walked to the nearest house phone and called the front desk. Management sent up security. The security guard knocked, announced himself, and used his master key. Inside, the room was freezing. The air conditioning had been turned to its maximum setting. The blackout curtains were pulled tight. And the bed hadn't been slept in at all. But someone had been in that room. On the bathroom mirror, written in what appeared to be condensation or fog from the cold air, were 2 words. She stayed. They never found out who had checked into room 412. The name on the reservation matched a credit card that turned out to be fraudulent. The card had been used to book the room 3 weeks in advance, and whoever had made the reservation had never actually checked in, at least not through the front desk. To this day, Renata does not work the 4th floor. This one comes from a man who spent 4 years working as a night auditor at a large hotel chain. And night auditors are the people responsible for closing out the day's accounts and managing the property during the hours when no one else is there, usually midnight to 6 a.m. It's a quiet job, a solitary one. He says for the most part, he liked the silence. Until one Tuesday night in late November. At around 2:15 a.m., the front desk phone rang. This wasn't unusual. Late calls came in regularly. Guests needing extra towels, the occasional drunk who couldn't figure out the keycard reader. He answered. The voice on the other end was a woman's. Soft, measured. Calm in a way that he described as unnatural. Like someone who was choosing each word very carefully. She said, "Can you tell me, is the pool still open?" He told her the pool closed at 10 p.m. and would reopen at 7 a.m. There was a pause. Then she said, "That's what I thought." And the line went quiet. Not a hang-up exactly. More like the connection just faded. He shrugged it off, went back to his paperwork. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same woman, same voice. "Is the pool still open?" He told her again. No, the pool was closed. He asked if there was anything else he could help her with. Another pause. "That's what I thought," she said. This time, he checked the display. The call was coming from room 214. He called room 214 back immediately. No answer. He called again. Nothing. Unsettled now, he walked the short corridor to the pool area and looked through the small window in the door. The pool was dark, still, undisturbed. He went back to the desk, pulled up room 214's reservation, and saw that the guest, a woman traveling alone, had been scheduled to check out 2 days prior. But according to the system, she had never checked out. Her key card hadn't been deactivated because no one had noticed. Security did a welfare check. Room 214 was empty, immaculately clean. All of her belongings were gone, as though she'd packed carefully and left, but her key card was on the nightstand, and the deadbolt was locked from the inside. He doesn't know what happened to the woman in room 214. The hotel's management discouraged him from asking further questions. He was told the situation had been resolved. He quit 3 weeks later. He still doesn't answer unknown calls at 2 a.m. The third story was shared by a woman who worked the front desk at a small boutique hotel, the kind of place with maybe 40 rooms. A lot of repeat guests, and the kind of staff who genuinely remembers people's names. There was one guest who came in so regularly that everyone just called him the regular. He traveled for work, stayed every few weeks, always requested the same room, room 9. He was polite, quiet, always paid in cash, which was unusual but not unheard of. After about a year of this, the woman, I'll call her Desiree, started noticing something odd. Every time the regular checked in, the temperature in the lobby seemed to drop. She mentioned it as a joke to one of her co-workers. Her co-worker didn't laugh. "You feel it too?" she said. Both of them started paying closer attention. And sure enough, every single time the regular walked through the front door, the energy in the room shifted. Conversations trailed off. The dog belonging to the owner, who normally roamed the lobby freely, would disappear into the back office and refuse to come out until the regular had gone upstairs. Desiree began looking through his past reservations, not for any particular reason, just curiosity. She noticed something. Every time the regular stayed, there was an incident report filed within 24 hours. A guest in a neighboring room complaining of sounds they couldn't identify. A housekeeper refusing to go near his floor. Once, a child staying with her family had apparently walked up to the front desk at midnight and told Desiree's colleague that the man in room 9 told me not to come to that hallway anymore. Except the regular had been checked in for 6 hours and had not, as far as anyone knew, left his room. Eventually, Desiree mentioned all of this to the hotel owner, and the owner was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I know, but if we stop letting him stay here, I'm worried about what he might do instead." He never explained what he meant by that. The regular still comes in every few weeks, same as always. Desiree no longer works there. This last story is the one that unsettles me the most, and I want you to pay close attention to the details, because it's the details that make it so hard to explain away. A man named Daniel worked room service at a full-service hotel for just under 2 years. It's fast-paced work, carrying trays, knocking on doors, smiling at strangers in bathrobes. Nothing glamorous, but nothing particularly disturbing either. Until one evening, he received an order for room 518. Steak, medium rare, a bottle of sparkling water. One setting, standard enough. He prepared the tray. I rode the elevator to the 5th floor and knocked on the door. The door opened almost immediately, as though the person on the other side had been standing right there, waiting. And there was a man in the doorway. Older, well-dressed, completely ordinary looking. He stepped aside, gesturing Daniel in. Daniel set the tray on the table by the window. He went through the usual motions, uncovered the plate, confirmed the order, asked if there was anything else needed. The man sat down at the table and just looked at the food without touching it. Daniel asked again if everything was all right. The man looked up at him, and Daniel said this was the moment that everything felt wrong. Not because the man did anything threatening, not because of anything he said, but because of his eyes. That Daniel described them as looking exhausted in a way that went beyond tiredness, like someone who had been awake for far too long, not just that night, but across many, many nights, almost beyond counting. The man said, "Do you ever wonder about all the people who ate in this exact spot before you came along?" Daniel said he didn't know how to respond to that. The man smiled, a thin, patient smile, and said, "Don't worry. I was just thinking out loud." Daniel left the room. He rode the elevator back down. When he got to the kitchen, his supervisor looked at him strangely and asked what took so long. Daniel said he'd just delivered to room 518. His supervisor shook her head. 518 has been empty all week. We've had it blocked off. There's a maintenance issue with the window that hasn't been fixed yet. Daniel went cold. He said he'd just been in room 518. He'd set down a tray. He'd spoken to a man sitting at the table. The supervisor called the front desk to double-check. Room 518 had not been occupied in 5 days. The key card system showed zero access to the room in that entire period, including in the last 20 minutes. Security went to check. The room was empty. The window was sealed with maintenance tape. On the table by the window, there was no tray, no plate, no food. But there were two things that shouldn't have been there: a single fork laid neatly in the center of the table, and a smell, faint but unmistakable. The smell of a meal that had just been eaten. I don't know what to tell you about the things that happen in hotels at night. Maybe there's a rational explanation for all of it. I genuinely hope there is. But the next time you check into a hotel room, and you're alone, and it's late, and you reach over in the dark to flip on the bedside lamp, pay attention to that first split second before the light comes on. That moment when the room is completely dark and completely silent, and you have absolutely no idea what's in there with you. That feeling? The employees already know what that feeling means.